Welcome, Allen Family Madness. You know what time of year it is. It's that time of year when kids are getting grades because it means they're back in school, which means it's the beginning of football season, which means it's the beginning of fantasy football season, which means by the transitive property of A equals B and B equals C, that it is time for you to receive your draft grades. So my trusty assistant, Mike, has to move, so substituting in for him will be Savannah. She's just as good of a grader as him, could be just as good of a commissioner, so let's see how she does. I'm just kidding. She will not be doing the draft grades, but what I'm not kidding about is that Mike will not be here to do his draft grades because he is in process of moving out of one house into another house, selling that house, buying this house, all sorts of fun real estate transactions, which leaves you with moi. So, welcome to the first ever edition of Tom Talk. Yes, this is based off of the great series of talks called TED Talk, which are influential videos from expert speakers on education, business, science, technology, and creativity. I am defining it based on being an expert talking to you about fantasy football. Now you're saying, is he really an expert? My answer to that is probably not, no. You see, I haven't made the playoffs in 3 years. I make some questionable draft decisions basically every year. And as a matter of fact, last year, I was battling it out with Priscilla for last place in our fantasy football league. So, my opinion is probably worth about as much as this autographed picture of Dwight Howard playing for the Orlando Magic, which, if you look on eBay, the last 10 auctions that have occurred, including an autographed picture of Dwight Howard, have totaled 0 bids. So, that's my spiel. I think, let me tell you about our grading system. So last year, we had a Thomas the Tank Engine grading system that required a bit of a Thomas the Tank Engine conversion chart. So I figured this year, I like conversion charts. I'm an accountant, I'm a number cruncher. So we're going to go based on Nicholas Sparks' novels based on the reversed chronological order of when they were released. That is how I will be grading us this year. Just kidding, guys. We're going to keep it sort of simple using letters. Whoop. So with these letters, it seems, all right, he's using letters just like we have in years past. But I like to create controversy because I don't want to just be giving everyone A's and B's. I want to make sure I hand out a good number of F's, some D's. So the way I'm doing it this year is I will grade each division as its own entity, and each letter can be received just one time with the wildcard Q, which will be the question mark. Because sometimes there's a team you just don't know what to say about them. So I'm leaving that in there. All right. I think we are ready to begin. So with that, move my handy assistant Savannah out of the way. Here she is sitting on the chair. Can't see her. And we'll begin grading, starting. We'll just go right down the draft board here. All right. So we have the Polymer Palace. Returning league champion, commissioner of the league. I hated to do this, and people are probably going to accuse me of sucking up to the commissioner, and that's not what I'm doing. What made it difficult here is, the East is a pretty weak division. Me being in the West, I know that's definitely the stronger of the two divisions. So giving an A in the East could mean I'm really giving it to like the 6th or 7th best team in the league. But looking at his draft, he did get Todd Gurley, which you can't go wrong with. Now, what I really hate about his draft is he took Mike Evans, and his only quarterback is Old Man Rivers. Now, maybe I am biased in the fact that I was scorned by Mike Evans last year, took him in the first round, and he was barely a top 30 wide receiver. And my players do tend to have big bounce back years the year after I have them. So maybe that'll work out for him. But where I like what he did is he got Royce Freeman, who I know a lot about the Broncos. He's going to be a great running back, lots of touchdowns. He also got a good wide receiver, Marquise Goodwin, and he got Kevin Hogan, which doesn't seem like a great guy, but after roster cuts, injuries, retirements, suspensions, turns out he's the only wide receiver left on the roster. So Mike gets an A based on that. I'm going to try to keep this sort of short. Mike's not here today. So actually, you know what? Since he's not here to slow me down, maybe I'll just take my good old time. So, grab your favorite pillow, put it behind your head, tuck it back there, cuddle under a blanket, and in the words of Terrell Owens, get your popcorn ready. Because it's going to be a long ride. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to try to spend about a minute or 2 minutes on each team. Not drag this out for forever because I don't want to bore you guys. And this is my first time doing this, and I'm probably not going to be great at it. So then we got Priscilla's Killets. So with her, oh, that's right, one other thing. Yeah, I'm not making good time already. Mr. David Sparing had this, he's a real team player when it comes to our league. He actually plugged all of our team's drafts into a special website or app. He's a little secretive about the whole thing, but he at least released the results. And without his approval, I'm going to show you what the results were anyways. So here's what the results were. So as I go through it, I will tell you how you ranked 1 through 12, 1 being the best draft, 12 being the worst, on this completely unbiased website because this is plugged into a computer. It crunches the numbers, tells you how you did. Palmer Paladin's ranked. I gave him an A because they're in the week East. 7th overall draft. Priscilla's Killets. Now, maybe it would be unfair of me to ding her for taking Le'Veon Bell, number 1 overall. And now he might miss up to maybe the first 9 to 10 weeks of the season by holding out. But I'm not claiming I'm fair. But I am consistent. I believe 2 years ago I dinged Billy for drafting Dion Lewis in like the 3rd round, and then he needed off-season knee surgery and missed a large portion of the beginning of the season. So I might not be fair in dinging people for what happened after the draft, but I'll at least be consistent about it. She has Le'Veon Bell, her number 1 draft pick, might be out for 10 weeks of the season. Also, I think they made the stickers for the quarterbacks red to let you know, like, hey, don't take too many of these. Don't take bad ones. Make sure you're being real smart about it. Well, Priscilla here, number 1, took Dak Prescott, which if you've listened to any or read any sort of fantasy article, say stay away from him. Then she took Andrew Luck, who might not even be able to throw a football anymore. I'm not sure. And just to have a 3rd quarterback, just in case, Andy Dalton. So wasn't liking that draft. So she got an F on my draft grades. And, I guess I'm going to go this direction for you guys, huh? In the number cruncher was the 11th out of 12th draft. So they kind of agreed with me there. Next up, we had Bills Buffalo. So maybe I'm not making sense with what I'm doing here. But I gave Billy an F. And not so much because of his draft, although you could argue taking old man Fitzgerald in the 4th round and Carson Wentz, who knows when he's actually going to start playing as your main quarterback, defense in the 9th round. Arguments for why he may not have had a great draft. But I'm giving him an F because of his team name. His team name this year is Bills Buffalo 4, which I love. But it's Bills Buffalo 4 Violent Delights. And I told him, make sure you pick a team name people know the reference for. Now, maybe I will stand corrected, but if any 2 people or more in this league can email me and tell me what that reference is without looking it up, I will stand corrected and I will change his draft grade. And one of those 2 people cannot be Billy himself. Violent Delights. What does that mean? So that's why you get an F, because you got to make a name that makes sense. Moving on. Monday Night's Watch. I like what he did. Going back. Billy, according to the draft number cruncher, was actually the third best draft. So maybe I should give him a higher grade, but I say fix the name. Monday Night's Watch. Michael Sparing. He's got on his team Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas at the beginning there, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Miller, Marshawn Lynch. I gave him an A for the West Division. Elliott, great running back. Thomas, you gotta like a guy with a last name like Thomas. He's got Aaron, who I believe the stat was last year when I drafted him. He's been on a playoff team every single year since our league started. Now, he's had a few years where he's been cut from teams because of injury. That's the big risk. But to cover himself, he got Patrick Mahomes, who could be an underrated quarterback this year. So he's got a solid draft, well-balanced, and what I really like is he did end up with Lamar Miller, who has hurt me in the past. I've had him for the past 3 seasons, missed the playoffs in all of those 3 seasons, but what he's doing with him is he's using him as his second running back. I typically have tried to use him as my number 1 running back. So with him as a number 2 running back, Elliott as a number 1, a nice balanced approach of wide receivers, running backs, and a great quarterback, and Jimmy Graham at tight end. This is why he gets an A. The number cruncher said second best draft in the league. So they pretty much agree with me. Then we have my team. Cap Tom America and the Javengers. So, I don't know. I've missed the playoffs the last 3 seasons. I think I had a good draft. But I'm obviously not performing too well once it comes down to it. So I gave myself the good old question mark. Because I don't really know what to say about my team. And we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. All right, the Cimarron Steelers. So, maybe we shouldn't talk about this draft grade. I do have to see him tonight, but maybe by the time this video posts, we'll have already left dinner with them. So maybe I can get away with saying it and him not noticing, or at least punching me in the face for it later tonight. But it's hard to do. I gave him a D. Now, maybe I just wanted to give him a D because his name's Dave. D for Dave. I wish it was that simple. No, what worries me a little bit is Deshaun Watson was a great quarterback, but he's coming off an ACL injury. Greg Olsen used to be a great tight end, but missed, I think, 10 games last season with a foot injury. LaShawn McCoy, he's playing right now, but there's some questionable legal issues that might end up causing him to miss part of this season. Demaryius Thomas, he always does pretty well, but I love the Broncos. They haven't been a great offense the last few seasons, and I hope Case Keenum can change that around, but I'm not 100% sure he will. The 2 draft picks I do really like are his 1 and 2 pick, but that just wasn't quite enough for me to say that I was going to salvage his team. Defense, maybe a little too early, 7th round. So, I'm sorry for the D. The draft number cruncher said he was 5th. So, a more unbiased source said he did really well. Then we have Dennis, who has a fancy team name this year. The Fournette Awakens, a nice play on the Star Wars, so kudos there. I like that. See a reference people know, Star Wars. He had a pretty good team. I said he was the 2nd best in the East. He got the B in the East. Fournette, who had a really good year as a rookie last year, followed up by A.J. Green, who's been a very underrated wide receiver the last few years. He always seems to drop in our draft, but then always ends up being a top 10 wide receiver. Got Gronk, as long as he can stay healthy, which he did basically most of last season. And Amari Cooper, who it seems that the Raiders are having trouble with wide receivers, cutting people they traded third-round picks for, got rid of Michael Crabtree in the offseason, so Derek Carr has to pass the ball somewhere. It's going to go to Cooper. A little shaky on the backup running backs. Ingram's out 4 games. Burkhead, Patriots running backs, always by committee. Hard to say how that'll play out. But I think he has a pretty solid draft. Drew Brees is always a good quarterback to have in fantasy. And I think last year was a bit of a fluke with how few of touchdowns he threw. So I think he'll come back around, throw more touchdowns. He's always going to throw for over 4,000 yards. And he's got Greg the Leg Zuerlein, who I had last year, was actually one of my second highest scoring players on the team, because I believe he averaged about 14 points per game last year. Now my team ended up being second to last in the league, so maybe that's not a good statistic to pull out. Now we have an interesting one, stock up. He did a great job. Loved his draft. You know, I know I said only one grade per person in the league, and the East already got the A with the Polymer Paladins, but I'm going to make an exception. This guy gets an A. Great draft. Not much else to say. Let's move on. Okay. I'm thinking you probably turn the video off now. You see, when we were doing the draft selection video, once he saw what his draft position was at number 4 here, he turned the video off. But if you remember, there was a bit of a confusion with Michael Sparing versus Mike Sr., and it turned out that Mike Sparing was actually the 4th draft position. So he did not find out he was actually at this position in the draft until my lovely mother finished the video for him, and then later informed him that, hey, you're not actually at number 4. So I'm hoping after I gave him that A, he turned the video off, because his real grade was actually, in my opinion, a D. Now again, is it fair? Probably not, but I'm consistent. He basically didn't have a second round draft pick this year. McKinnon went down early, and then on top of that, he's banking on Allen Robinson being his top or second best wide receiver. He's coming off an ACL injury himself, and Emmanuel Sanders, pretty high for a guy who's the second, maybe even third wide receiver in a mediocre offense. And then his next best running back after what will be Kareem Hunt, since McKinnon's injured, is Chris Thompson, who's coming off a broken leg and in a running back by committee in Washington. So a lot of scary stuff. He also doubled up on the quarterbacks back-to-back, which I don't like the strategy. You can only play one of them at a time. I like having 2 on your team, but I don't think you need to do it back-to-back. And Matt Ryan already looked shaky in his first game. So then and his draft grade on the number cruncher. I think I skipped Dennis. Apologize for being unorganized in this. Dennis was 6th best. And the draft number cruncher agreed with me and said my dad was the worst draft overall, number 12. Sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. But hopefully he's not watching. So moving on to Bobby. He went double down on the Giants, which, I don't know. I gave him a C, because I just don't know how that's going to play out. Giants offense obviously has the chance to be explosive. Last year it was abysmal with injuries, but one of those injuries was Odell Beckham. So you hope he stays healthy this year, but now he's been paid his money. Is he going to play as hard? He's injury prone. Saquon Barkley's already nursing a hammy injury. So a little scared about all that. And starting in the 6th round, he already started taking backup players. Tevin Coleman, Kerryon Johnson, and a running back by committee. So, I feel like he started pulling the trigger on some handcuff type players a little bit early on. So he got a C. But, again, I might not be the expert you want to listen to. Number Cruncher gave him the number 1 best draft in the league. So we'll see how it plays out for Bobby. And then we have my lovely wife, Kristen. So, I gave her a B. And maybe you're saying, hey, that B, I think that stands for bias because you're giving your wife a better draft grade, and maybe people like Dave and Billy are like, what is, he's giving his wife the B ahead of us? That's ridiculous. But my motto in life is live every day like it is your last day, to please your wife before she kicks you out of the house. All right, so happy wife, happy life. I gave her a B, but I do think she had a good draft. Got a great wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. Christian McCaffrey, who had a great rookie season and I think will continue to see a lot of looks on the field carrying and catching the ball. Tom Brady, who I despise with every last fiber of my being, but you know what? He just keeps going. Zach Ertz, one of the best tight ends in the league, going with a nice balanced approach, which we saw the Cimarron Steelers do that year. They went wild and went, I believe, like 11-3 or 11-2 when they had a great quarterback, great running back in Adrian Peterson, quarterback with Manning, great tight end in Jimmy Graham. She's kind of going with this nice balanced approach, having a lot of good players up front. So maybe I'm biased, but what are you going to do about it? I'm the one filming this video. Moving on to Peter. He was the absentee drafter this year. Obviously, very extreme circumstances as he was on a boat in a fake war zone. And for him, I gave the question mark, the Q. Because I just don't know what to think of this team. Second draft pick was Dalvin Cook. He's coming off an ACL injury. He got his man Travis Kelce back. But was it a little too early in the draft for him? I don't know. Maybe. He's got Baldwin back. I just feel like one of these years, he's not going to catch the 14 touchdowns from Russell Wilson. And then in the top 6 picks, 2 of his top 6, 1/3 of his top draft picks are from the Cleveland Browns. And I know people are high on the Browns, but Jarvis Landry and Carlos Hyde that early, I don't know. I'm just not sure I trust it, but he could have if it plays out well, this could be a great season for him. He's got Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, one of the two should play out well. And then in our last spot, we have Kate Kelly. Oh, I think I've missed, sorry, again, for the disorganized approach I'm taking to this. Trying to run this show. I'm the producer, I'm the director, I'm the cameraman, I'm the CFO, I'm the CEO. I'm the main personality, I'm the analyst, I'm the color commentator. I'm doing it all. It's tough. It's tough. It's chaos. I'm trying to keep it together. So what I have missed, sorry for my rant. Kristen, according to the unbiased number cruncher, came in at 9. So I gave her a B. That said she got a 9. So maybe there's bias there. What are you going to do about it? I came in at 8. Not that anyone cared what I came in at. And Pete actually came in at 4th. So according to that, his substitute drafter did a pretty good job for him. I'm just not sure. I'm full like, oh my goodness, it's Godzilla. No, it's just Savannah who is really trying to join in on the broadcast here. So maybe it's not a one-man show. I have a cat as my sidekick. Moving on to our final and last but not least, Kate Kelly. A bit of a mixed bag here. So I ended up giving her a C. She's going all in on the Falcons' offense with Devonta Freeman, who I think this past game that we saw on Thursday night was a bit of a fluke. I don't think he'll just get 44 yards per game or 4 points per game. And Julio Jones, who I think she got at a great price all the way at 12. I know our league does not like him because of the kind of boom or bust nature of him. But I think he's going to be a little bit more consistent this year. I think Matt Ryan's going to have to look his way more often. And I think it's going to work. That part's going to work out for her. Where she gets a little shaky is I'm not sure about the likes of Derrick Henry owning the backfield to himself. Golden Tate as her next best wide receiver, and I'm not even sure he's the best wide receiver on that team. Julian Edelman, who's going to miss 4 games. I'm just not sure. She shouldn't go 0-13, but I'm not sure she'll necessarily have a winning record, which isn't bad because last year she made it into the playoffs with a losing record. So, that's all I have. I ended up taking quite a while anyways, even without Mike, but in my defense, I challenge you guys to get through 12 teams, an introduction and a conclusion in a quick period of time. So that's all I have to say. Good luck to you all this fantasy season. Not really. I hope I finally get back to the playoffs. It's been a while. I hope you enjoyed this first edition of Tom Talk. It could be the last depending on crowd response to it. And if it is the last, it's been a good ride. Well, good luck all. We'll see you out on the gridiron.